So, how would you, let's say, advise maybe a child of yours not being married, but maybe you have a trust or a dynasty trust set up so it does not impact your child if there's a separation?
So I'm going to speak in generalizations, so I don't step over a line I shouldn't.
Yes.
So in a multi-generational dynasty plan, it's possible to structure assets for the next generation in such a manner that they are protected from all those eventualities that can happen. So I have seen structures on many levels. I've seen this more than once where an individual in generation two has a house that is either owned by an irrevocable trust established by their parents or has debt on it.
Welcome to the Vision to Reality podcast. I'm your host, Curtis L. Jenkins, and in each episode, I speak with industry experts, thought leaders, and innovators to break down the strategies, techniques, and methods that turn their ideas into reality. Whether your vision is to scale your business, build and lead a winning team, prepare for your next big career move, this podcast is for you. Let's get started and bring your vision to reality. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vision to Reality podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Jenkins. I'm glad that you're tuning back in because today we have an incredible episode lined up. Today, we're talking about live well, leave a legacy, building wealth, family, and impact that lasts 500 years. And to help us dive deep into this conversation, joining me is Rick Durfee Jr., founder of the Durfee Law Group. Richard Durfee Jr., known as Rick, is the founding and senior attorney of Durfee Law Group, where he has been helping families and business owners with estate planning, asset protection, and legacy strategy since 1988. Based in Arizona and serving clients nationwide, Rick specializes in everything from simple wills and trusts to complex multi-generational dynasty planning. He's known for his unique family-centered approach to estate planning, focused not just on transferring wealth, but on preserving relationships, strengthening families, and building tax-efficient legacies designed to last for generations. His guiding philosophy is simple but powerful: live well, leave a legacy. Rick is also the author of Trust Issues, where he explores how thoughtful planning can prevent conflict and protect both material and non-material wealth. Welcome to the show, Rick. This is a fantastic and phenomenal topic. I hear people talk about generational wealth all the time, but I think you're going to be here to tell us how that can be achieved and some of the cool stories that you have, both good and bad, that people have around estate planning. So why don't you go ahead and start by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit more about Rick that I didn't say in the bio.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. And it is really a pleasure to be here. I enjoy you and have appreciated our opportunity to work together. So, some things that won't appear in my bio. I am the oldest of 12 children. And to put an emphasis on that, my parents modeled a healthy and successful relationship. And of me and my 11 siblings, all 12 of us, we are all married to our first and only spouse. And that's an
That's an
accomplishment. And I
accomplishment.
credit my parents with that and the goodness of my own wife. So I have 8 children. I started out actually not in the legal field. I have an undergraduate degree in Asian languages. I speak Japanese, a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of French, and then I have an advanced degree in world religions, religious studies. And I was kind of on a track to be teaching world religions in a university setting and helped with that for a while, but decided I couldn't feed my family in a healthy way on what they were willing to pay me. So I sold out and went to law school and became a lawyer. But that background has kind of shaped how I approach the law. I'm maybe not quite as clinical or as sterile, or for sure not as adversarial as lawyers can be. I'm very sensitive to and aware of the other part of legal planning, that this is people and people's lives, and they have feelings and beliefs, and they love their family. And so as part of that, when I first became a lawyer, I took a survey. I tried one of everything that lawyers do. And in my experience, I know others may have different experience, but for me, I found that a lot of things that lawyers do are just kind of despicable. They're not nice. And So I went looking for, is there something I can do as a lawyer that does not require me to step on people's necks and spit in their face? And the estate planning kind of proved to be that way. People have a good problem. They have money and people they love, and they would like to protect both. And in fact, they would like the money and the people to have a happy relationship with each other, so that neither one harms the other. And if we can devise plans that help them do that, we're heroes. And we never have to be nasty and mean. So that kind of evolved at early on in my career as I pursued that. I had some really, really good mentors who had decades of experience doing this kind of work that gave me some guidance, helped me learn some things that I've been able to build upon. And it's that classic expression that I can do what I can do, and I can see what I can see because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So I acknowledge that I have a rich heritage of really awesome people who came before me that have shown me and taught me things that have helped me be here. So our approach is, hey, the most important wealth that anybody has is not the money, it's the people. And if we do all these fancy footwork steps to avoid a tax or to avoid probate, and we mess up the people, we have not done anyone any favors. So how can we structure things so that it's both saves taxes, avoids probate, does other things that are beneficial, but at the same time is good for the people?
Yeah. So I am a person who has taken some time to understand and study and witness what it's like when a loved one passes away and then the strife that the family goes through. And I know that people know that they need to do this. They know it, Rick.
They
But
do.
what stops them and what would you say to them to sort of remove their own personal barriers? Because it's so important.
Like everything else in life that we know we should do, I should stop this bad habit that's not good for my health.
Right.
I should, eat better. I should work out more. Stop putting poison in my body of one kind or another. We all know that, but it's such delicious poison. I don't want
Yes.
to.
Yes.
So we don't. But one of the things that motivates people, candidly, Curtis, like you've mentioned, is when something happens close to home,
Hmm.
when suddenly they're dealing with the passing of a relative or a friend or a neighbor, and they witness what goes on. So interestingly enough, conflict in the administration of an estate mirrors pretty closely divorce. This is slightly more than half the time the family ends up in conflict and even litigation, and that's not healthy. When you have family members suing each other or lawyering up, and you can talk to my lawyer if you don't do it my way, that's never healthy. There's no positive outcome for that course of action. So when people see that, and one of the things that I candidly find striking in a lot of estate planning is that it gives lip service to that, but does not really take ironclad steps to preventing litigation in a family. When we review trusts or review planning that other people have done, and we point out, hey, there's no mechanism in here to avoid conflict in your family, and they go, I can do that? What? How come nobody's told me that?
Yeah.
So that's an example of some things that, well, we've always done it this way. Let's just do it the same way everybody else has done it. That if you're thinking creatively, if you have the benefit of some of the mentors I've had, you realize, hey, there's some kind of little fine tuning adjustments we can make that dramatically reduce the probability of litigation or family fights.
So let's double down on that. And this is really about the Rick Durfee experience or the Durfee Law Group experience. What would you say are unique about what you do that your customers really, really like? Now, I'm full disclosure. I'm a customer. I'm a fan, and I'm going to share how we met and why I like you and why I like the law firm and what it did for me immediately when I first met you. But I want to hear from you. Like, what's your differentiator?
So most of the time when someone goes to meet with an estate planner, the estate planner is going to ask a series of questions that go something like this. What have you got?
Hmm.
And who do you want to give it to when you're dead? And okay, I'll write up papers that does that. And okay, that's essential, but it's not sufficient. There's
Okay.
more. So some other questions might be, well, what do you want this to do to your family? How do you want your family to deal with this? Do you want to create dependencies where they are incentivized to not work and just live off your money? Or do you want to create incentives where they have a reason to get up and be productive and useful and add to the wealth, not just deplete it? So there's a whole layer of discussion about what are the consequences of this going to be on the people that can then play back into the structures that we use. And we've identified some key things. Avoiding litigation, we've already kind of mentioned that, but also avoiding some of the obvious, nasty family drama that can destroy wealth. Well, what happens if one of my children have a divorce? Well, let's think about the probability of that. In today's world, it's 50%.
50%.
So,
That's right.
pretty good odds. You can tell me, "Oh, my children would never do that," and we go, "Yeah, right. If they haven't yet, just you wait." And, "Oh, my children would never sue each other." Yeah, right. Just you wait. We'll see about that. We can prevent the wealth from being gobbled up by all of those family drama kind of events. And turns out that that resonates with people. They like that. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to protect the wealth and preserve it from the family drama, there's an interesting consequence. Early on in my career, this was just kind of like a side benefit. It's like, oh, gravy on the side. It turns out, no, the gravy, that's the good part.
Yeah.
So turns out that if we're going to actually protect the wealth, that when the next generation, when generation two passes, there's still going to be money.
Mm.
Still going to, in fact, if we do it right, it'll be bigger. So then that opens up the opportunity to think about, well, that makes it multi-generational, whether we want it to be or not.
There you go.
So we can just do that without any thought. Well, we'll be dead. They'll figure it out. Or we can be mindful about that. Well, how does that work? What are the tools that are available to us? I'm going to be dead. I'm not going to be there. But can I hand off tools and devices that will help my descendants long after I'm gone, protect them from the bad things that can happen, and help them structure the wealth so that it's not only tax efficient, but again, protected from all the bad things that can happen in the world? And it turns out there are some really cool things. And let me just kind of mention, and this is a theme I hit big time in that book you mentioned, Trust Issues. When we look at the macro society as a whole, what do the demographics tell us? And these are frequently quoted statistics, and there are studies that back this up. Inherited wealth dissipates over time when you divide it up and distribute it out, and the
That's
next
right.
generation just gets it. No strings attached. Do whatever you want to with it.
Yep.
It's destroyed.
I think the Vanderbilt proved that,
Oh,
right?
yeah, the Vanderbilts, the Astors, there's a lot of families that have experienced that big time. And the number is 9 or 10%-ish
Hmm.
makes it to generation 3. By generation 4, it's gone. At the same time, there are other families that have successfully grown wealth from one generation to the next, made it bigger. It
Yeah.
keeps getting bigger and bigger. And also in the process, turned out highly productive, powerful, effective human beings that live decent, good lives, and the family prospers and continues. So what do they do differently? And there are some things. And we can study the success to learn what to do, study the failures to learn what not to do. And we've kind of focused on
Oh man. So there's two things that going through my head. The first one is you talked about doing this for 500 years, right?
that.
And I like that because, you know, again, you talk about generational wealth, you talk about the various generations. You're taking a lens. I've never heard anybody say that lens. What I've heard people say is, will this decision matter or will you matter 3 generations from now? Because 100 years from now, you pretty much are unknown, right? Even to your own family. And what your process does is your process sort of allows you to live on to take care of those that you don't even know,
Right.
right? And it's not costing you anything in terms of your own life and the life that you're living. You're just
Mhm.
compounding and passing on things that hopefully will continue to compound and you really create a good name for yourself. Just talk to me a little bit more about that and share your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I have clients that I'm working with now. We're working with generation 4.
Mm,
So I've been doing this long enough. I knew grandma and grandpa. I knew your mom and dad that passed away, and now I'm got you and your kids. And so I've seen it go 4 generations just in my professional life. And I've also encountered families because I'm kind of in this space, and we go to events and we meet people. I've met people that tell me, "Oh yeah, my family, I'm 10th generation," and they can trace it back hundreds of years. And I tell some of those stories in that book, Trust Issues. But I've seen it work. And I've seen it work big time. On the other hand, and here's another story. Some time ago, I was with some family members and we were in Egypt. And our guide pointed to this big, huge rock. It was, I don't know, 20 feet tall and about 8 feet wide and 3 feet thick. And he said, let me translate these hieroglyphics for you. And he said, so and so, and he named who it was, and I can't remember. He says, from here to the Nile, forever in perpetuity, this person and all of his descendants owns this land tax-free forever. And I said, wow, that sounds like a dynasty trust. That's really cool. Where are these people? And the guy said, oh, they've been dead for thousands of years. Nobody knows. So on the one hand, we really can't manipulate or micromanage what's going to happen beyond our lifetime. We can't. People are going to make their own choices, and nature and politics and economies and life and all of those things are going to have their way with people. But we can do what we can do. And what we can do is, it's like that ripple in the pond. We throw the stone and it ripples out. We can throw a rock in the pond that sends positive ripples down through the generations of our family. And a big part of that, there's a kind of a hardware side and a software side. The hardware side is the legal structures, the legal documents. Those are like the hardware, but the software piece is equally important. And that's the family culture, the values, how generational knowledge is transferred. And so as an example, we make a big deal out of promoting what we call the family council, where a family comes together and counsels together, and where they're each other's counselor, and where here's a big decision, and it's not going to be a top-down, daddy knows best, do what I say, and it's going to be a let's counsel together.
Yeah.
And let me use a kind of a trivial example of this that illustrates why this matters in a family culture. A long time ago, when one of my sons was about 10, I said, come here, buddy, we're going to go for a ride. And we went for a ride, and we said, this car we're in, it's several years old. It's starting to cost a lot of money.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about getting a new one. What do you think? I asked him his opinion, a 10-year-old. Well, Dad, and I want to plug my stereo in and all these things. But we talked about that and we counseled together. And I shared with him my thinking and my decision-making process, and I asked him his opinion. And when he gave me his opinion, I looked for genuine things that I could validate and say, yeah, you're thinking in the right way here. Or maybe the stereo is cool, but is that really what matters? Well, yeah, you're probably right, Dad. But anyway, so we had that dialogue. Now that young man is an adult and has kids of his own, and I see him doing that same thing with his children. And
Nice.
that's really awesome. So that's a little thing, but we can do that same thing with big things. Should I buy a house? Should I sell the one I'm in? Should I start a business? Should I sell the business? Should I grow this or not grow that? All those kind of decisions and the process we go through in life, if that becomes not just I'm doing this in my life, it's me, 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 but this is a family thing. I'm going to involve family members in this and we're going to counsel together. Then that sets up the next generation to thrive and prosper and succeed on their own right, independent of the first generation, and they can make their own money. They don't need mine. So that when they get mine's just the gravy.
Today's episode is brought to you by ConvertKit, the email marketing platform designed for creators, consultants, and entrepreneurs who want to communicate clearly and scale their influence. Here on the Vision to Reality podcast, we focus on turning ideas into action, and ConvertKit gives you the systems to do exactly that. Whether you're nurturing leads, growing your audience, or launching new offers, ConvertKit helps you build real relationships through clean automation and thoughtful communication. If you want to transform your expertise into steady momentum, ConvertKit is a tool worth having in your business. You can check it out using the link in the show notes. Once again, the link is available in the show notes. And now, back to the show. Yeah. Wow. So, first of all, kudos to you, right? Talking to your 10-year-old now grown son who's actually doing it, right? That's having that family council. That would have seemed like it was a very interesting conversation to have with the young person and getting them involved. I think about conversations that need to happen across the board, right? So spouses or even domestic partners,
Mhm.
talking to your parents. I've witnessed where people didn't want to have these conversations because they they're the first persons in the world whose mortality is not finite, or they just are just so afraid of talking about money or finances, and maybe even talking to their child, even though it's a grown child. Like, I don't need you to know about my money. And so I guess what I'm asking you is, how would we have these conversations? How do we start these conversations? I guess you gave me a good example with kids, but just in various relationships, right? So your relationships to your parents that you need to have this conversation, relationships to your siblings who you could be fighting for things if not talking, relationships with your significant other, whether you have a contract, relationship, marriage, or not. What are some of the things that you would recommend for people to have the conversation no matter what relationship situation you're in?
Thank you for asking that question. That's a good question. One thing is establishing a safe place for those conversations to happen, which is why I like that term family council.
Hmm.
Let's counsel together. And there's some vulnerability with that. I'm going to share that this decision is out there and I'm not omniscient or omnipotent. I'm quite mortal and I acknowledge I could screw this up and do it wrong. And so I'm going to be vulnerable and ask your opinion and your advice. So parents asking children makes it a huge difference in engaging in the dialogue. And this is kind of maybe kind of silly, but it sometimes compare this phobia, this hang up we have about talking to our family members about money. If I tell my children that I'm wealthy or that I have something, they'll just be looking forward to my death so they can get their grubby little hands on it. And that's so. First of all, that's a dim view of your own children. Second of all, it kind of underestimates what they're really capable of. I like to compare talking about all the things we're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table: money, religion, politics, and sex.
Hmm.
So let's go with the sex thing because that sells books and movies. So how much should we talk to children about sex? Well, there's some things that are just none of their business, but there are other things that they really need to hear.
Yeah.
And coming to talk to mom or dad about what they heard at school, what's going on with their friends, that needs to be a safe place. I know that if I have this question, if I heard something I don't understand, I heard something that kind of freaks me out, it's kind of icky, what? That I can come to mom and dad and it's safe. So establishing that space. This is in our family, it's safe to ask questions. It's safe to be vulnerable. It's safe to acknowledge, hey, there's something I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. And we're not going to be attacked for it. We're not going to be ridiculed for it. We're going to be loved. And that's so huge. So, Kelly, with children of 8, that's when we had the talk. And so when you have the talk about money, well, we're kind of about the same age. By the way, you're 8. Guess what? You can buy your own lunch.
Yeah.
You can decide for yourself. And that's another conversation. You're someplace with a child, and the child says, "I want that, Dad. Buy that for me." You've got money. If you want that bad enough, use your money.
Yeah.
I don't want it bad enough to use my money. I want you to use your money. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it doesn't work. Life doesn't work that way. So it's countless little micro conversations that add up. But the family council, I mean, literally, that's kind of like a board meeting. We're going to convene a family council. So even things like we're going to go on a vacation.
Hmm.
We have this time allotted. We're going to go on a vacation. Let's have a council. What are the options? We could go here, 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 here. Here's all the places. This is in our budget. That's out of our budget. We can do these things, but not those things because this gets us in jail or whatever. And this is okay. This is too dangerous, but this is a little dangerous, but still fun. All those kind of things. We have all those discussions. And we talk about it, and it's not sometimes the type A, I have to be in charge person, the top down command and control person struggles with that.
Yeah.
And it can really that it's that kind of parenting that results in the least capable children in the next generation, or the ones that are capable, they rebel and they leave the family and say, "Pound sand, mom or dad, I'm not going to talk to you again." So, I don't know, safe space, having a formal, we do this. I will tell you, I kind of made a deal about my family. My siblings, we still get together every month. Now we live in different parts of the country,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
some of it's by Zoom,
Hmm.
but we get together, we take turns who's going to host and where it's going to be. And everybody doesn't make it every time. Sometimes people just can't make it or whatever. But we have an open channel where this is a place we're going to gather here at this time. Come on. And everybody who can shows up. And it's glorious. My goodness, to keep those relationships open. And we do family reports. We talk about business. We talk about who's having issues that needs help. Is there something I can do to help with whatever? All of those kind of discussions happen in the context of that family council. So my children saw that modeled. We do the same thing with our own children, and they do it with their children. So right now, there's multiple generations in a family doing that. And when you tie into that the financial stuff, we in fact we have a meeting once a month that's devoted exclusively to evaluating deals. Bring a deal. Let's talk about it. And sometimes it's, I don't have a deal, but I read this really cool book and it gave me this idea. I want to talk about this idea. But we see deals all the time. And okay, wow, I like that one. I'd put money in that. Or yeah, that one. I tried that one once and this is how it blew up in my face. So that again, a safe space, a formal time set aside to do it, and then
Yep.
just do it. Be vulnerable.
No, so I like it, and I noticed there's one word you didn't use. You didn't talk about death, right? And I think that's what people are afraid to talk about. Like, I think people are afraid to talk about money, but I think they're even more afraid to talk about death. And one of the things, that I've heard, and I think this is to be true, is that us baby boomers, right, are at the cusp of our life turnover. And we also have most of the wealth, right? Because we've been able to amass it, accumulate, and compound. And so we're about to have one of the most massive wealth transfers that I guess in the history that I'm aware of.
Yeah, in the history of the world, probably.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't wanna say that
That's
because
how it's
I'm not
characterized in the
studied enough
media.
or old
Yeah.
enough, but you get what I'm saying. So here we are with this, and we got these mental barriers. Like, I love what you just shared, right? But you have a generation of that happening. You've gone through it, you've practiced it with your family. But I'm really thinking about beginners. I'm talking about people who were not where even I'm at with you, but before that, how do we get them started? How do we get them like you never used the words death. You talked about finances. So, I'm trying to get help for these folks to just take the step, make the phone call and get this going.
Sure. Let me circle back to some very fundamental estate planning things. Most people equate planning your estate with what's going to happen to my stuff when I'm dead. But
Yes.
actually, a lot of estate planning is implemented and effective long before you die. And as an example, there are some documents that are very basic to estate planning, some powers of attorney,
Yeah.
medical powers of attorney, a living will, and other things, even a will, where you designate people who are going to make decisions. You're not dead yet, but because of accident or age or a medical event or for some reason your ability to communicate is compromised. So you handpick who you would want to make decisions for you in advance. And is that a good idea? Well, let's consider the option. If you don't pick, guess what? The courts are going to decide for you, or the doctors.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick break to say thank you for tuning in to the Vision to Reality podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to level up your business or career, I've got some great resources for you. To turn your business vision into reality, my book, Vision to Reality, Start Working, Start Living, is available now and filled with strategies to help you bring your goals to life. Plus, the companion Vision to Reality digital workbook is the perfect tool to guide you step by step through the process. You can grab both at curtisljenkins.com. And if you're preparing for your next job search, check out my book, The Only Job Search Book You Will Ever Need. This book uses proven marketing strategies that have been used for over 60 years to help you rise above competition to land your dream job. You can grab your copy at curtisljenkins.com. And I have great news. This book will be updated with a new version that includes recent impacts on the job search process, such as remote work, AI, government policy changes, and much more. Thanks again for listening. Now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, so either you're going to decide who you want to make those decisions on your behalf, or somebody else is going to make that decision for you. Now, which would you rather do? Would you rather be the one who decides, or do you want to surrender that decision? So
Yeah.
that's a for the people who I'm afraid I might die someday. Well, yeah, you're good, but we can't deal with that. So How about having a plan for what's going to happen to you during your lifetime so that you are not vulnerable to somebody else coming in and taking control of your life that you don't want to?
Yeah.
And so that's an entry level thing. By the way, everybody over the age of 18 should do that. When your kids go away to college, you should help them do those documents so that if they have a car accident or a medical event of some kind, you as the parent have legal authority to act on behalf of an adult
Yeah.
who you lose that ability once your offspring become adults. They get to make their own decisions. You no longer have an automatic right to do so just because you're the mom or the dad. So sometimes that entry level, I know that what I see is the bait is the obvious stuff with the stipulation. Oh, I want to avoid probate. I don't want to have my estate tied up in court. I don't want to pay taxes when I'm dead. And it's when we come in and we ask those other questions. Well, what's going on in your family? Do your kids get along? Do your kids get along with you? Have you been able to talk about money? Do they know you have money, or are you hiding it from them? Because, by the way, that's like pretending you don't have sex. Kids figure it out. You're not keeping it a secret from them. Uh, they know. So you might as well come to terms with it. No, my children don't. But you haven't been working for 10 years. And look at the car you drive and the house you live in. Yes, they know you have money. So I don't know if that helped. I don't know if
No,
I
no,
answered
no,
your
that
question.
helped. So if I had to summarize it, right? A good, easy way to have the conversations really, really early, especially around the age of 18, is to help people understand that you should have these conversations when you have control. And a power of attorney, that's a real thing. Medical power of attorney, right? Because you could have an accident, like you said, and I have those things, and I get it. So it makes sense that these are some entry level items. And I would even say that many people that I've encountered, they don't really talk about the probate taxes because they're not even sophisticated in that space financially, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm noticing that when people do start to become more sophisticated, then those are like the things that they focus on. How do I avoid tax versus how do I create this long lasting family bonding activity that leads through a generation 2 or 3 times after we're here that helps us to pass our wealth and our information on.
We because we want to persuade people to do this, not just because it's our business, but because it's actually a good thing that helps people, it makes their lives better.
Yeah.
But so we've been looking at what's the decision window to do this kind of planning. And interestingly enough, a number of studies that show, and these are studies that come from marketing people, that from point of first question, oh, I wonder if I need that, from that question to making the decision to actually do something for this kind of planning is about 18 months. So it's not like, oh, what do you want for dinner tonight? Well, let me think. What's on the menu? Do you want you need a new car? Well, okay, you might spend a couple of days looking and then maybe look at the financing and the terms. I like this one better than that one. But this, for some reason, it takes people a while.
Yeah.
During that 18 months, in the best case scenario, people are upping their game. They're educating themselves, especially
Mhm.
today.
Yeah.
If there's something you don't know, there's a YouTube video about that.
That's right. That's
And
right.
you and I both have some of those.
That's
So
right.
go become smarter than you are at the moment. This is the dumbest you'll ever be. You're going to be smarter tomorrow if you do something about it. So go learn something. Find out what your choices are. And that's a biggie. In fact,
Yeah.
that's a line I've loved with my children all along. There's some dilemma. This is going on, and I don't like it. Well, what are your choices? And get them to articulate. Well, I could. And then they go. Sometimes just saying what their choices are. They go. You know what? Among my choices, the good one is conspicuous. Same with this kind of planning. People go, I don't know what my choices are. Well, there are several. Let's identify what they are and what the pros and cons are, and then it will be conspicuous. It'll be obvious to you what's going to be right for you.
Yeah. Let's take a step back into you talking about the world religions that you study. One of my favorite classes at the time, I was just getting it for a grade, but it opened my mind up to so many different things. And I had an assignment where I could either write about a particular religion or I could visit the temple and then convince somebody to come or whatever their place of worship and come speak. And of course, I did that. I tend to do the more bolder option. And
Sure.
I went to so many different groups of religion from the Hare Krishnas to Nation of Islam and all in between. The thing that I wonder about is when you are having these conversations where with people about estate planning, does religion play a role as a barrier or a thruster or somewhat in between? Does that ever come up?
Well, it does come up, and I don't perceive it as a barrier.
No, I mean, not you. I'm saying the person, right? So as you're doing some estate planning, will somebody say, my religion won't allow me to do X, Y, and Z?
Well, actually, yes. And, for example, there are in the medical documents you mentioned, we're accustomed to we can have there's Islamic provisions, there's Jewish provisions, there's Christian provisions, there's I think you're all crazy, there's no God provisions. So we are accustomed to that and can make adjustments to people's sentiment. So I don't see that being a barrier, but I think it is something that often gets ignored.
Yeah.
And in fact, on a living will, for example, I've had most people go, "Yeah, I don't wanna be kept alive if I'm brain dead. Let me die." But there's a few people, usually religious, that say, "You know what? Here's the line. I'll go this far, but no further." And so we'll fine tune the language to accommodate their feelings. I think that this is my experience because I'm aware of even people who claim to not have a religion, they all do.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as not having a religion. You can have the religion of I don't have a religion, but that's still a religion. And so people believe things and have strongly held convictions, and people also have a sense of right and wrong,
Mhm.
and they have a sense of sacred. Even the so-called non-religious who say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God," but they'll still have a sense of, oh, that's a sacred thing. That's special. It's different than everyday ordinary things. That's a sacred thing. And when people are aware of that and you're sensitive to it, they'll open up. They'll share it with you. This is where I'm at. This is how I feel. And one of the benefits, I guess, of my secular academic training in that area is that's made it easier for me to recognize everyone's sense of what is sacred to them. And I don't have to take issue with it. I go, well, yeah, that's your sense of what is sacred to you. That's beautiful. I
Mhm.
honor that. Let's figure out how to uh, give that meaning and effect in your planning. And for sure, that shapes family values and what they want to have happen with their children. It certainly affects the culture of the family. It affects attitudes towards, do I empower my children to make their own choices, which means sometimes they're going to choose to do things you don't like,
Mhm.
or do I coerce and compel them to do what I want, regardless of what they want? There are some vigorous differences in that often have religious links, and that's we just have to deal with that as it comes up.
Got it. You mentioned you and your siblings all are with their first spouse.
Yes, and
How
only.
many first and only, that there you go. That's right, that's right. Well, you gotta have a cool family, right? So I can see why you would wanna stay in it, right, with all those things that you guys do. Prenups or no prenups or a mix?
In my family, none. Now,
No prenups.
here's the difference, though.
Yeah,
All of us married young when we had nothing.
okay,
So whatever wealth anybody had, they built it together as a married couple.
got it.
That's different, and my counsel today would be different. If, okay, we're marrying late or it's a second marriage, and there's children from a prior marriage, or there's significant wealth on one side or the other, those are factors that are different than when you're marrying young with nothing.
Okay. And so how would you, let's say, advise maybe a child of yours not being married, but maybe you have a trust or a dynasty trust set up so it does not impact your child if there's a separation?
So I'm going to speak in generalizations so I don't step over a line I shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, in a multi generational dynasty plan, it's possible to structure assets for the next generation in such a manner that they are protected from all those eventualities that can happen. So, I have seen structures on many levels, I've seen this more than once, where an individual in generation two has a house that is either owned by an irrevocable trust established by their parents or has debt on it. We've done what we call an equity strip. We've stripped out the equity in favor of such a trust so that even without a prenup, that individual's house and their equity in that house is protected if the marriage goes sideways. And I've seen situations where good, solid, strong marriage, no issues there, but they're getting a loan that's got government guarantees, an SBA loan or something, and the SBA says, we want to lien everything because that's what they do. And then they discover, oh, wait, this asset has no equity in it and it's in that trust over there. Okay, we'll leave that alone. So I've seen it not only protect from troubles in a marriage or potential troubles, but from things like that, things like lenders that want to lien it, or even hostile third parties, the opportunistic, predatory litigator who sues everybody anytime they can. And they go, I'm going to sue you and I'm going to take everything you've got. Well, guess what? I don't have that and you can't get it. So that kind of multi-generational planning can be very, very powerful. And that's one of the benefits actually when we're working with generation 2 or 3 or 4 and they say, hey, I'm doing this deal. Can I piggyback off of the planning my parents or my grandparents did and structure that so it's tax efficient and so it's protected from the bad guys? And more often than not, we can. And
Right.
that takes, by the way, that takes a perspective that an attorney who is not doing multi-generational planning just won't have. They won't think to look for that because they don't know it's there.
Yeah.
So you don't get answers to the questions you don't ask. So if you know, hey, let me ask this question because I know of several possible answers that might benefit this family. Here's the tool we need to get this favorable outcome that we wanted. And thank you, Grandma and Grandpa, for doing good planning because now we can use that to our advantage. And you've been dead for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How about protecting grandma and grandpa the other way? So I don't want their house to be taken, but I need to put them someplace to be taken care of. What can I do so that I protect the assets? And what can I do now so that there's no, let's say, Medicaid clawback or
Sure.
things like that? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So Medicaid can be tricky. And certain kinds of transfers will, in fact, make the asset, the house or whatever, vulnerable to that kind of clawback scenario. But other kinds do not. And I'll give you an example to illustrate this. So we have elderly mommy and daddy who their only asset is a house, but it's got a lot of equity in it.
Hmm.
And their child, Junior or Missy, is doing well in business and has done some dynastic planning. So and by the way, when mommy and daddy need care, who's going to pony up and pay for that?
Right.
Junior is.
That's right.
So we're going to structure that assistance that Junior gives to mom and dad as a loan.
Mm,
And we're going to secure that loan like a home equity line of credit with a lien against mommy and daddy's house. And now Junior, because he's ponying up and paying for mommy and daddy's care, he's got a lien against the house. And he gets to recover all those contributions he's made to mommy and daddy's care after mommy and daddy pass away. But by the way, because mommy and daddy still own the house, they still got to step up in cost basis so the house can be sold after they've passed without realizing any capital gains. Junior can be repaid the money he's put in there and we can protect it from, Medicaid gets in line after that loan that is secured from Junior. So there's things we can do is the bottom line. That's just one example. And candidly, sometimes, especially when it's late in the game, I hate to say this, but sometimes it's the farm metaphor. The cows got out of the barn 3 days ago. It does no good
yeah.
to close the door now.
Yeah.
Early prevention is better than after the fact trying to mend something that's already broken.
Yeah. I think the biggest lesson that I've gotten from this conversation so far is start now.
Yeah.
Start now and remove those barriers. It takes about 18 months before you start thinking about it to getting it done. You start to educate yourself, continue to do those things, but start now is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Well, this kind of playing, interestingly enough, improves with age. It's
Yeah.
like a fine wine or a fine cheese. The older it gets, the better it tastes. And the older it gets, the more effective it is at protecting things. So there is a time sensitive element to this that it's better if we can get on that, make some decisions, do something. And in fact, doing anything is better than doing nothing, even if you say, well, okay, I might have to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
Okay, make adjustments because you can do that.
Yep. Make the adjustments while you can, right?
I was at a business conference a few days ago and One of the participants there was a fighter pilot, and he said, being an entrepreneur is like jumping off a cliff with a bag full of stuff and making an airplane before you hit the ground."
Yeah. Yes.
So I thought that was a colorful metaphor. But sometimes, you got to jump off the cliff. Just do something. Let's get these basic documents we talked about in place. Maybe if you need one, if it's appropriate, let's get a trust. Maybe it's a dynastic trust. Maybe it's not. But do something, and then you have some protection, and then we can adjust that over time as your wishes become more clear, as your needs change, as your family evolves.
Yeah. So let me come back to something I said I was going to talk about, and that was what attracted me to you and your law firm, right? And so we met at the Money Show. I think it was either 2020 or 2021.
Yes.
And my buddies and I were going. So, talk about having a council. We're talking about my friends and I, who not only do we travel together and play golf and enjoy, really good things in the world. But we talk about finances, we talk about business, and we deliberately came to this money show. And I remember coming to your booth, and the one thing that you had there, without even having a conversation, was I saw this visual layout of a dynastic trust as an example. And I'm a visual learner. And you had this conversation with my friend Claude. As you guys were exchanging, I was just kind of taking the conversation in and watching. And that document, I mean, to me, if there was one thing that I would say that you do better than anybody that I've ever talked to about this, it is you make it visual understanding where you can actually literally see what you need to do, how it's done, how it's structured, all your LLCs and everything else, your children, and the details behind it. That to me is phenomenal. Tell me what motivated you to put that together?
Well, this is one thing for which I have to give credit to a mentor.
Okay.
I had a mentor decades ago, and we were working with a family that had a lot of family members. It was a traditional family. Frankly, they were from China, and they had a lot of businesses and a lot of family members, and it was dang complicated. And I had taken a yellow pad and filled out every page with notes, and I couldn't understand my own notes. And my mentor at the time said, "We need a picture of this."
Yeah.
And we had a big whiteboard in our conference room at the time, and we drew it out. And the client goes, "I see. I get it."
Yeah.
And we can say, "This is where you are, and we need to make this adjustment and add this new thing and move these around like this." And we got it, so we could understand it more clearly. The client got it. Then when we went to the advisors and said, "Look, this is what we're doing. Does it make sense?" The advisors go, "Yeah, that makes sense." So we started doing that for clients, and that just it took off. And I get accused. One of the things that's done that I'm not sure it's really good, but we add more and more detail all the time. "Oh,
Mhm.
we should put the EIN on there. Oh, we should put what state it's in on there. Oh, we should put whatever." And so sometimes it's really data dense,
Mhm.
and that can be overwhelming to some people. But at the same time, I have lots of CPAs I work with, that say I have to have the latest version of the diagram with your client, with our mutual client, or I don't know what I'm doing. Well, okay, here you go, buddy. It's yeah, I learned that from somebody else, and then took it and we made it color and pretty and all that kind of stuff. But that's something I learned from somebody else,
Yeah, well, kudos to
a
you.
great attorney.
Yeah, kudos to you for leveraging your mentor and getting that done. I got three more questions for you.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is, and these are questions I typically ask on this show. Tell me about a person, a family, or someone that you helped through your process that changed you, and what was it that you learned or changed? And you don't have to use anybody's specific names or anything like that, but how did you, like, in applying your craft, learn something about yourself that was just different as a result of doing it?
That's a really good question. Wow. So I'm going to be vulnerable in answering that question. I will kind of backhandedly acknowledge some things.
Okay.
One of the hazards for estate planners who deal with people that have a lot of money
Hmm.
is it's easy to feel some degree of envy.
Yeah.
I'm smarter than that guy. That guy is a fool. How come his net worth is 100 times bigger than mine? What am I doing wrong? One experience that I had that kind of, I don't know, knocked some sense into me. I have a client, and this is actually a conglomerate of more than one client. So this is
Mhm.
a consolidation of several stories into one. Very high net worth, hundreds of millions of dollars, three children, and we structured it. There's something we call capping the burn rate, where there's
Mhm.
a cap on how much a beneficiary can get in any given year. And it was actually pretty high in this case. It
Mhm.
was like 650 grand a year, which is that's a lot of money, even
Yeah.
in Mexico. I mean, that's a lot of money. Uh, uh, when we presented this to his children, one was an engineer and said, "Yeah, I don't care, whatever, Dad, go ahead." Another one had a bad experience. That's a different story. But the daughter said, "Dad, don't insult me with your money. I don't need your money. I can make my own." And you know what? She did. So I guess one of the ways that changed me is uh, I don't need to be envious of anybody. I can do my own thing. I can make my own money, and change in perspective has been very powerful.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Every time I hear now a story about comparing, what we all do, one of my previous guests gave me a little moniker that I use now. To compare is the despair, but to admire is to aspire.
I like that.
I love that. I give that credit to Joy L. Crawford, one of my earlier guests. My last question, I think I asked you, wait, I asked you one. No, my second question. My second question is in preparing for coming on this show, we would talk, but there might have been a question or two that I did not ask you that
Mhm.
you thought would be good for people to hear the answer to. What is that?
That is also a very good question. And let me just tell you, I am assertive enough. I already answered those. I built it into my other answers.
Okay.
So I wanted to talk about the fact that there's a wealth cycle that wealth is destroyed by generation three if we don't do something about it. But there's people
Yeah.
that have done something about it and it works. So I
Okay.
built that in.
Okay, nice. All right. Well, cool. Well, then my last question would be, how do we get trust issues and how do we get a hold of Rick and the Durfee Law Firm?
So Trust Issues is available on Amazon. The first edition is there currently. In a few weeks, a second and vastly improved edition will be out. So even though I would love everybody to go buy the first edition, and and it will never have any collector's value, I would say give us about 2 weeks from the date we're doing this, and the new edition should be out, and then go on Amazon and get it there. If you show up at an event like you've mentioned, the Freedom Fest or Money Show or other things where I speak, I usually bring a box of them and sell them there for slightly less than you would pay on Amazon. So come to one of my events, come and be our client, and we'll give you one for free. That's a poor motivation. To reach us, we have a website, durfeelawgroup.com, and a ton of articles and examples and diagrams and illustrations. You can go there. There's a whole library of learning materials that have no purpose. They're not trying to upsell you anything. They just want to inform you that you can do these things. And similarly, our YouTube channel, Durfee Law Group on YouTube, we have a lot of videos and we're constantly creating new content out there solely for the purpose of having people through that 18-month period. Even if they choose to work with somebody else, we want to do our part to help elevate people's level of understanding. And then our phone number, our office number here is 480-324-8000. And if people call and I'm available, we have multiple attorneys. The numbers changes from time to time. We're a mid-sized law firm. I'm the old guy. All the rest are younger than me as part of our 500-year plan. So you may or may not get me, but the others are immersed in the culture of what we're doing and are constantly. That part of the reason we're here is to learn how to use the tools. So I'm trying to pay back. I had good mentors. I'm trying to be a good mentor to others now. So that 100 years from now, when we're all dead and gone, there will be a law firm with attorneys that are knowledgeable and skilled and able to help the descendants of our clients when they're dealing with whatever issues arise.
That's awesome, Rick. First of all, I'll make sure that all your information is in our show notes when we produce this and release it. But I want to say to anybody that's listening to this is a serious conversation to have with your family. And I'd often run into my own friends or people always discussing generational wealth but I don't think that they fully understand what it means. And so I'm a client of Rick's, and I wanted him to come on this show to share this information because it's so vital. And as we talked about earlier, this is going to be one of the largest wealth transfers of money happening throughout the next generation. So be sure to connect with Rick sooner rather than later. Do the study, do the learning, do the understanding, and definitely have the conversations with your family. Rick, this has been a most amazing conversation. I want to thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Curtis. You've been very generous and kind, and I appreciate our association always.
Absolutely. And until next time, Visionaires, we'll see you on the next episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. A huge thank you to today's guests. You can find all of their contact information in any resources mentioned in the show notes below. Also, can you do me a big favor? If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, and a review, and share it with a friend or colleague who could benefit from the information shared today. And remember, vision without action is just a dream. Let's turn those big ideas into reality. I'll see you in the next episode.